Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and good morning. We will try and keep this tight. We have 4 of our 6 candidates here this morning. Some are apparently suffering from campaign fatigue, and they didn't make it, and others literally are fatigued because they just got back into town at 2 a.m. But Larry, thank you for making the special effort for being here. We're going to follow the same format as we did previously, and actually the same format we've followed for years. It'll be questions and answers. And we'll have time at the end for closing statement. If you folks, please, if you have some questions you'd like to have asked, you got cards in front of you, write them down and get them in, and I will do my darndest to get as many of them incorporated into the program as we possibly can too. So, Paul has the cards, he'll pick them up, and we will run from there. Okay. Cool.
We follow the same format as thank you again for attending this morning's Rock County Civics Academy program. Our ability to provide these presentations is solely dependent upon the financial support we receive from our sponsors and you, our faithful listeners. Our presenting sponsor is Havana Coffee on Milton Avenue. This program would not be possible without the ongoing support of the Italian House and Big Radio, WCLO, WJZL. Supporters include Ragnar Ltd. and Ragnar Software, the John Westfall family, Dan Plushik's Janesville News Report, American Awards and Promotions, Stockman Property Development LLC, Tim Lindow, Nowlin Law. If you believe in our mission, we welcome your financial support. Materials explaining our mission and financial support opportunities are available on the table or by visiting our website, commonsenserockcounty.org. Now, Rich.
Thank you. And we're going to begin instantly here. And the first question is going to go to Aaron, and we will rotate on an alphabetical basis going through as we have in the past. Josh Erdman, would you please tell us what event or events caused you to decide to run for election to the Janesville City Council? And we'll come back and let Aaron get settled in there.
So I've served as a firefighter paramedic for the last 20-some years, so serving in public service already. And my wife and I got involved in going to more meetings and committee things and attending council meetings about 5 years ago. I served in the Sustainable Janesville Committee for the last 4 years, and in that time period, I've noticed some things with the city where I think there could be some improved communication, some better transparency, some better engagement with citizens, and that got me started to think about my decision-making process as a firefighter, paramedic. I identify life-threatening problems and make decisions on how to come up with solutions. And I feel like as a council member, I may be able to use that same thought process. And so this service is one more way for me to continue my overall career as a public servant and continue to serve the community in another way.
Thanks, Jess. Let's go back. Aaron, if you are ready and you caught your breath, please explain what event or events caused you to decide to run for election or re-election for the Janesville City Council.
First of all, I want to thank the Morning Rotary for having us, and second of all, I apologize for being late. Didn't get home till 2:30 in the morning due to a tactical call up in Milton. I spent the last 2 years on the City Council running for re-election because, I guess I'm one of those guys that like to serve my community. I spent the last 25 years in law enforcement for the Sheriff's Office. The last 2 years on the City Council, there's been a lot of decisions that have shaped the city, not only in the near term, but in the long term. And we continue to have projects coming up, such as the Centennial Park with the GM and Jacko plant. That's going to take some leadership. That's going to take some thoughtfulness, and it's going to take some hard decisions on how we move forward on that. And those are the type of things that I want to be involved in. I want to be able to help make these decisions for not only the near term, but for my family and my kids so that they have a future. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Matt Gonzalez, what event or events caused you to decide to run for election to the Janesville City Council?
Sure.
Good morning, everybody. Matt Gonzalez, and
Pull that up close to your, pull that mic
a
up.
little closer up.
Yeah,
Is that
very
better?
good.
There we go. All right. Good morning, everyone. The main thing that got me to start my bid for City Council is I just felt that we needed a younger face on things. I felt that we needed a little more of the younger generation involved. I think that my generation isn't quite as involved in politics. Some of them might be, whether it be out of disillusionment, disencouragement, or whatever it might be. But I felt that it was time to actually put my money where my mouth was and try to run and get involved myself.
Thank you. Larry Squire, what event or events caused you to decide to run for election to the Janesville City Council?
Morning, everybody. It's strange to be up here looking backwards instead of looking forward at this time, but that's okay. Yeah, running for city council really was, a culmination of a lot of events over a lot of time. Cindy and I and our family have been here over 30 years, been part of the community, whether it's in scouting or sports or running a bank, a $500 million branch in a $6 billion corporation. You understand how to make decisions. You understand how to make critical decisions. You understand how to lead people. And those are skills that I've developed over, a 25-year career as a president of a bank. And Janesville's in a great path. We're one of the fastest growing cities in the state. We've done a lot of great projects in the last few years. We've got great staff at the city. This is an opportunity to just keep that rolling. Are there going to be some tough decisions? You bet. Just like Aaron mentioned with the old GM site and how do we manage our resources. But this is a great city. I love it. I just want to find a way to keep making it better, and I'm excited to do it.
Thanks, Larry. Paul Williams, what event or events caused you to decide to run for re-election to the Janesville City Council?
Well, there are several things coming up on the agenda, and again, it's been mentioned, the GM Jatco sites, and want to see how that process works through. We also have the Woodland Sports and Convention Center. I have not been a big proponent of that, but now that it's been approved and is going to be built, I want to be on the council to help make sure that the building process goes correctly, and then we still have to decide on the management, who's going to manage that, the city or an outside source. So I'd like to be part of that decision-making process. One of my other committees that I'm on besides the City Council is the Plan Commission, and we're going to be redoing our zoning on that, and that may help us with some of our shortage in housing here, where we can do some mixed use that's really not allowed now, and we're looking into that, and I want to be part of that process. So, thank you.
Thank you. One of the big challenges, and we'll begin this round of questions, Eric, with Josh, if we could. One of the big challenges the city faces is dealing with the management of tax increment financing districts. Should the city be encouraged to continue the practice of financially bailing out money-losing TIF districts using available proceeds from successful TIF districts? Or should TIF districts be required to stand on their own financial merit?
There's, in the state of Wisconsin, TIFs are fairly strongly regulated in comparison to other states, and so they're one more tool in the toolbox for the city in order to be able to look for economic development. And I think we should continue to use them where it makes sense, but we need to be careful about picking and choosing what types of projects and make sure that there is economic benefit coming out of those TIFs that benefits different areas of the city. So moving them around too much or building too many new ones and exceeding the amount of space that we have available for those TIFs is an issue that we need to watch as we continue to utilize those. I think it's very important that we make sure that all areas of the city are receiving the same type of economic growth potential, and that's one of the things we need to consider as we analyze those aspects.
Thanks, Josh. Matt Gonzalez, same question. Should the city be encouraged to continue the practice of financially bailing out money-losing tax increment financing districts using available proceeds from successful TIF districts? Or should TIF districts be required to stand on their own financial merit?
I think that's a pretty complex problem. I think obviously if we are currently already looking at TIF districts, so we can use Chicago as an example, where they have multiple TIF districts overlapping, some of which completely fail, whether it be because it's not something economically viable or because the developer actually bails out completely. We still need to actually be able to succeed in that district for the people that live there, for the surrounding properties, to make sure that we don't end up putting the tax burden back onto the citizens. So I would say it's more of a case-by-case basis. I don't agree with the idea of starting a new project just on the basis that we have other TIF districts that'll bail it out. That's not a good practice. That's like, you know, taking out a loan, using credit cards to pay off from Peter to Paul. I think that it's important that we actually do support the entire city. So obviously TIF districts are one major way that we do that here in Wisconsin. But it's unfortunately a case-by-case basis.
Thank you, Matt. Claire Squire, same question. Should the city be encouraged to continue the practice of financially bailing out money-losing TIF districts using available proceeds from successful TIF districts, or should the TIF district be required to stand on its own financial merits?
I'll agree with Matt. This is a case-by-case basis without a doubt. Right now, the city uses a pay-as-you-go formula and has been very consistent with that at this point and going forward, which I think is very wise. It puts a little onus on the owner of how they're going to have the project structured and funded, rather than taking cash and paying it up front from the city. This is a pay-as-you-go situation. It's been consistently applied, you know, I don't even know how many years back, but I like that process. And then once in a while, you're going to have a company fail. You're going to have a situation fail. These TIF districts are put in place based on information that's you know, present at the time the decision is made. Stuff changes, and so we have to then look at that, be critical analysis on did it fail, for what reasons, how do we avoid that going forward, and just make sure we're doing what's best for the city, for all aspects of the city, to utilize this important tool for our economic development.
Thanks, Larry. Paul Williams, same question. Should the city be encouraged to continue the practice of financially bailing out money-losing TIF districts using available proceeds from successful TIF districts, or should TIF districts be required to stand on their own financially?
Well, first of all, I think Janesville has a pretty good track record on our TIF districts, and unfortunately, it's one of our only very few tools that we can use in order to help with economic development. You've heard it over and over again, Janesville does not get its fair share of state revenue coming in back to us, so we have to use a TIF district in order to encourage those developments. TIF districts are reviewed by all the taxing districts that are going to be affected by that, and they have to be approved by those districts. Should we use money from other districts? Well, again, it's been said here too, that has to be on a case-by-case basis. I can't think of anything right at the moment that's having a problem that can't be solved. I think all of our districts are doing well, and I think Janesville's done a good job.
Thank you, Paul. Aaron Burdick, same question. Should the city be encouraged to continue the practice of financially bailing out money-losing TIF districts using available proceeds from successful tax increment finance districts, or should those districts be required to stand on their own financially?
Well, the question suggests that the city has a philosophy of that's how we operate, and I think that's not the case. It's rare, and it is these TIF districts and TIF financing. We have to look at them at a case-by-case basis. There's a reason why these districts are set up, and that's to promote revitalization or development in certain areas within the city. As Larry said, pay as you go. Since I've been on the council, I think most of the tax increment and financing packages have been pay as you go. We've also had other benchmarks that we put on there as far as how many living wage jobs that they have to meet and when. So the pay as you go, it basically, I guess, it's kind of protects us from failure to a certain degree. So I think we do a pretty good job of that, and like I said, since I've been on the council, most of them has been pay as you go, which will eliminate some of those issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. This next round of questions will begin with Matt Gonzalez. The city is currently proposing the expansion of tax increment financing district number 38 along the Milton Avenue corridor. At the same time, one measure of successful investment downtown is the financial health of the downtown tax increment financing district. It currently runs in the red. What would you propose to do to reinvigorate downtown in view of the expanding investment in the Uptown Janesville Mall?
I mean, one of the big things I know, at least for myself, having been here a few years, is the farmers market that we have going on and being able to draw that attention. Obviously, we're always in competition with the Beloit farmers market, but I think ours is a little more wholesome. I think that we draw a different crowd to ours. I think it helps highlight how Janesville has that small town vibe and still has those big city attractions at times. I think leaning into that, trying to bolster the farmers market a bit more. Obviously, events like Flannel Fest and stuff do draw more attention for our downtown area. It gives people a reason to come, have a beer or two, or 5, and then go grab a meal at one of the local businesses, take a look around a few of the shops. I think working with some of the small businesses that are down on our downtown area would help. I know we just had a nice little stationery store, and I go there myself. As you can see, I got the notebook out, get a few markers from her. But yeah.
Thank you, Matt. Squire, the city's currently proposing expanding tax increment financing District 38 to now include the area surrounding the Uptown Janesville Mall. At the same time, one measure of successful investment downtown is the financial health of the downtown tax increment district. It's currently running in the red. What would you propose to do to reinvigorate downtown in view of the impending investment in the Uptown Janesville area?
I think downtown is starting to hit its own rhythm, but with any process, there's some ups and downs in it. And, it was mentioned already, we're going to be reviewing some zoning. And when we went through the COVID recession area, we've got some big buildings downtown right now that are office retail related. And those are struggling in Janesville and nationwide. So how do we come up with a plan to reinvigorate those buildings? They take up a lot of square footage for our spaces downtown. So we have to find creative ways to encourage people to occupy those, utilize those, make those happen. Those are cornerstones of that downtown area, and that is going to be a key for us. So then how do you make sure we activate downtown? Ever since we redid Town Square, and I was a part of getting that done, it's how do you activate it? Music on the Marv, absolutely amazing what DJI and some of those groups have done. It's about activation and matching that activation. And we have a big downtown to try and make happen.
Thank you, Larry. Paul Williams, the city is currently considering expanding tax increment financing District 38 to include the area surrounding the Uptown Janesville Mall. At the same time, one measure of successful investment downtown is the financial health of the downtown tax increment financing district. It currently runs in the red. What would you propose to do to reinvigorate downtown in view of the impending investment going to the Uptown Janesville Mall area?
Well, I think if we look downtown, we've just had the Monterey redone, the Monterey Hotel. The apartments, I believe, are pretty close to being full in there. We had Crazy Joe's, I think it was, the furniture store that's now going to have office space in the front and has the climate control storage in the back. And there are other buildings downtown that are just turning around. So I think that district downtown will come back to the black. We have the old, for those of you who are my age, the old Woolworths building. That's still in the process of being redone, and there are some other projects down there. So TIF districts at times do not always perform as we would like, but with the public partnership, public and private partnership, they will turn around. And I believe that the one downtown will, and I believe that the one at the Old Town Mall with some redevelopment out there and with possibly housing out there, I believe that will come true too.
Thank you, Paul. Aaron Burdick, same question. The city is currently considering expanding tax increment financing District 38 to include the area surrounding the Uptown Janesville Mall. At the same time, one measure of successful investment downtown is the financial health of the downtown tax increment financing district. It currently runs in the red. What would you propose to do to reinvigorate downtown in view of the impending investment in the Uptown Janesville Mall area?
Well, I mean, I'm 48 years old, and You know, I think this is probably the most vibrant I've seen, or that I can remember being downtown, except for back when the circuit used to be there on Friday night, back in high school. But, you know, in all seriousness, there's been several projects that have been recently completed or are in the process of being completed. Once those are fully realized and in place down there, I believe the momentum will keep going. Somebody touched on it, these public and private partnerships that help develop these. We got to continue to support that. We're looking at revamping the zoning ordinances. I believe that's going to help. You know, and I really don't think that the uptown will necessarily compete with the downtown. I think the goal is to have some kind of synergy between those projects, right? We got the Cobblestone Hotel, and we've got more housing that's been. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Josh Erdman, same question. Tax increment financing District 38 expansions being considered actively by the city to include the area now around the Uptown Janesville Mall. One measure of the successful investment downtown is the financial health of the downtown tax increment financing district. It currently runs in the red. What would you propose to do to reinvigorate downtown in view of the impending investment in the Uptown Janesville Mall?
The initial deterioration of downtown came from the building of the mall out on the northeast side. Since then, we've been able to put some money into downtown, but now we're building another capstone development project up on the northeast side, and I think we need to be aware that the possibility that downtown is doing fairly well right now, but not where we need it to be, and doing that is going to now draw some things away. So the solution that I can come up with that is the best is downtown sits as the middle of our hub of our city. We need to make sure that we invest in the entire city. If we can invest in other neglected commercial corridors besides just a single one, and the city has historically kind of focused on one at a time and allowed others to sort of deteriorate. If we can focus on the south, if we can focus on the west, then the downtown automatically will benefit from all of those economic development pieces, both what's going on currently with the northeast side and what we can do with TIF 38, as well as making the entire city feel like something that can work together for economic growth.
Thank you, Josh. The next question, we will begin with you, Larry. The city just proposed using condemnation proceedings to acquire the former General Motors site. Is this the appropriate use of legally taking property from private sectors for unspecified redevelopment purposes?
Given the blighted nature of that property and what we've seen take place, this is a first step, and that's all this is. This is a first step, and it's time to gather more information and get something moving. Sitting here and doing nothing is not a good option. So how do we move forward? This is one of the legal options, one of the tools available for us to find out what are the best options. It's going to take a lot of partnerships. It's going to take a lot of time. You're going to have to work with the DNR, the EPA, the current owner, neighbors. This is just the first step to say, is this the right next step in order to find a way to redevelop 240 acres right on the interior of our community? And it's a difficult project potentially just because of location. Right now, when the other TIF districts take place, they take place on the outside of town. So we're going to have to come up with another good plan of how to utilize the resources of the city and possibly county and state and EPA to see where we go. But this is just a good first step.
Thank you, Larry. Paul Williams, the city just proposed using condemnation proceedings to acquire the former General Motors site. Is this the appropriate use of legally taking property from the public sector for unspecified redevelopment purposes?
Yes, this is the process that the state law has implemented. Back when CDC took over, I was very hopeful. They were actually given high marks by General Motors that they would come in and take care of this and everything would be hunky-dory. Well, we see that's not the case. So we have to use this process. It's going to be a long, involved process. There are going to be appraisals done of all the different sites, not only just the GM and Jatco site, and there's a hill out there that's called the Scylla site, and then there are some other ones on Jackson Street. The city gets an appraisal, the property owners get appraisal, there's trying to be a meeting of the minds, So it's going to be a long process, but I think that's the only way that the site's going to get cleaned up and redeveloped is if the city takes it over. One of those reasons is because a municipality can apply for grants that local companies cannot, so we'll have to go through this process.
Thank you, Paul. Aaron Burdick, the city just proposed using condemnation proceedings to acquire the former General Motors site. Is this the appropriate use of legally taking property from the public sector for unspecified redevelopment purposes?
Well, in this situation, yes. I voted in favor of beginning this process. First of all, fundamentally, I don't believe the government should be taking anybody's property. However, in this situation, this affects the greater city of Janesville. It's 250 acres. It's a brownfield site. You know, in a perfect world, we wish that CDC come in here and did what they're supposed to do, be good stewards in partnerships with Janesville, and the site would be redeveloped and so on. Obviously, that didn't happen, and we don't believe it will ever happen unless we take steps to basically own this property and redevelop it. We haven't committed any money at this point, and we need to be very cautious when we get to that. We have to weigh all our options and what kind of costs that we may incur on this. But this is a huge part of the city, and we have to take this seriously, and we may have to bear some risk involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Josh Erdman, the city's just proposed using condemnation proceedings to acquire the former General Motors site. Is this an appropriate use of legally taking property from the private sector for unspecified redevelopment purposes?
I drive past the GM plant on my way to work every day. So we've noticed that it's obviously a failed market experiment at this point in terms of whether private industry could deal with this and move it forward. At this point, the GM properties, we know they're polluted. We know that there's federal and state grants available to us. And so dealing with those particular properties and making sure that gets done so that we can move that property forward to what we want it to look like in the city of Janesville is an important thing for us to do. As I mentioned in forum several weeks, or at least over a week and a half ago, I am concerned, however, about other properties in the area, recently reported in the Gazette, for instance, that were included in part of that relocation and are not necessarily blighted or polluted, and perhaps we should really let the market situation take care of that while we plan a good strategic plan for dealing with the actual polluted properties and move them forward in the way that we want for the city of Janesville.
Thank you, Josh. Matt Erdman, the city just proposed using condemnation proceedings to acquire the former General Motors site. Is this an appropriate use of legally taking property from the private sector for unspecified redevelopment purposes?
I would agree that it is, but kind of like when it comes to the TIF districts, I think that this is a very specific and case-by-case basis sort of thing. Just a second on what Josh had mentioned and what's already been said by, I think, everyone at this point. The main concern and the main worry we have is that this would be used in some way against a citizen, that this would be used in some way to take a small business or someone else's property that maybe isn't in a state of complete condemnation. When it comes to the GM Jatco site, it's a little more nuanced because we're looking at something that we did already try selling this off to private ownership and seeing if they could get it cleaned up, and they cannot. The funding that would be available to us as a city is a little bit different. There's specific, as Josh mentioned, there are grants that we would have available to us to offset that cost. But the other thing I think to consider is that this is a site that is contaminated, and in being contaminated, contamination doesn't just stay where it is, it spreads. So in not taking care of this now, it's something that's going to continue to spread.
Thank you, Matt. This next round of questioning, we will begin with Paul Williams. Paul, what is your vision for the development of the Centennial Office Park? And what's the ideal timeline for that redevelopment to take place?
Right now, it's kind of a blank slate. If you look at that site, for those of us that have lived in Janesville, myself, my whole life, and others for a long time, it's always been a commercial site. It's always been heavy industrial. But the city did flew a drone over that site, and you can see that there are it's residential all the way around, and that's kind of the way it was when the plant was being built. So there is a possibility from just about anything on that's available. Could be residential in some of the areas, could be commercial. I'd certainly like to see some commercial go back in there due to all the infrastructure that's already in there. But again, it's going to be a long process. It's going to depend on how long this first step takes, and there are several steps. So we'll have a lot of meetings and a lot of input, and with the rezoning, we'll see what we can put in there.
Thank you, Paul. Aaron Burdick, what's your vision for the redevelopment of the Centennial Office Park, the 250-acre former GM Jatco site? And what's the ideal timeline for the redevelopment envisioned to occur?
Well, first of all, I mean, we have to have a philosophy when it comes to this project, and 250 acres within, you know, the heart within the city, I think is unprecedented having that opportunity. We can't get in the mindset of, you know, GM and Lear and some of these other companies, large companies were there, and we need to replace them with the same light, right? We have a blank slate. We're redoing the ordinance for zoning, and what we have to do is put a lot of money up front in figuring out how we want this to work, and we have to take in mind on how this is going to affect and how the city will flow, because this is an opportunity to use this as a catalyst to, it could basically change kind of the functionality of the city depending on what we can have developed down there. So I don't know if our city staff is fully capable of doing this on their own. We're going to probably have to do a request for proposal to get some experts in here to help us with that. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Josh Erdman, what's your vision for the redevelopment of the Centennial Office Park, the former GM site? And what's the ideal timeline for that redevelopment to occur?
One of the things that I need to, anytime I make decisions, I need to have the ability to do some analysis of what's going on. So in terms of timeline, we really need more information about just how polluted and the types of situations that, to the extent of which we're going to have to work, because there's going to be obviously a lot of operating costs and things that we're going to have to seek for grants as part of that. But what we really need is a good strategic plan for moving forward and knowing exactly, once we have an idea of what some of those operating costs are going to look like, a strategic plan of how we're planning to move forward and make it very clear so that we're not investing too much forward into the property and then requiring the taxpayers to pay for that over an extended time period before we can move it forward. We need to make sure we have a good plan for development. We need to make sure we engage the Southsiders surrounding the area, but that area is part of that potential rebranding of the South Side and the potential to use the new zoning laws to have some mixed use, both commercial and residential, be able to start coming into the area and start to have both economic growth and increased housing in that area.
Thank you, Josh. Matt Gonzalez, same question. What's your vision for the redevelopment of the Centennial Office Park, former GM Janesville properties? And what's the ideal timeline for that redevelopment to occur?
To adjust the timeline first, I think, not to parrot Josh here, but I think that we need to actually see how contaminated that property is. We need to figure out what work needs to be done there to get that suited. Obviously, if we try to build housing there and we have, contaminated ground, we need to make sure that's completely removed before we even think of having anyone live in that area. We potentially would have kids there. We don't want anybody growing up sick. We don't want that passing down for generations. That's kind of the main concern in us getting it taken back from CDC at this point. Obviously, like anything else, if we're going to be developing in the area, we want to make sure that we do include businesses to some degree. I think taking a look at the new zoning laws would be good, just so that we can make sure that we have something where we are addressing economic needs for the city while also providing housing for any citizens that are currently stacked up, living with parents, potentially don't have a home to go to. Obviously, affordable housing has been an issue for us for quite a while. Oh.
Thank you, man. Larry Squire, same question. What is your vision for the redevelopment of the Centennial Office Park, the former General Motors Jatco site? And what is the ideal time frame for that redevelopment to occur?
Yeah, I don't think you can put an ideal time frame on it because we don't know what animal we have yet or what we want to do with it. So the idea of this is just going to take a lot of study, and this is the good and the bad. We've got a whiteboard, a clean slate. That's the good news. The bad news is we have a whiteboard and a clean slate, and we got to figure out what to do with it. So it's an exciting opportunity. I mean, when you have that large of a piece of property that is in this, so centrally located to the city and can be a game changer, what do we do? And so it's about going and getting information from what other communities have done. We don't have to recreate the wheel. Let's get out there, ask other communities what happened. Go over to Kenosha. When the AMC plant went down over there, they got creative. They got state money, made a big change. Take a look at where Kenosha is now, even compared to a Racine. So this is just an amazing opportunity, and we got to go get information. Information on contamination, information on opportunities, information on rate of return, risk reward. It's a lot of information to be gathered, but it's an exciting time, and let's go figure out what we can make out of it.
Thank you, Larry. This next question will begin with Aaron Burdick. Aaron, people have had strong opinions on the building and operating of the Woodland Sports and Convention Center. What do you see as your role in mending fences and getting the entire community involved in the success of the center?
Well, I mean, mending fences, I mean, I don't know if there's really a disconnect there. There was a lot of talk on it, and some people were loud when it came to the project, but I believe there was a vast majority of support for it. However, I do believe that, I can't speak to prior to me getting on the council, but as time went on and Chief Moore took over as the interim city manager, I think we were a lot more, I guess, systematic in our approach of keeping the public informed of where we were at and what we were doing and why we were doing it. And I think that's kind of how it kind of had a bad undertone until that started happening, and then we realized that people were understanding what the project was about, where we were at in the process and how it's going. So continue that. We have continuous updates at every city council meeting on the project. We just need to be transparent and clear and make sure that information is out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Josh Erdman, people have had strong opinions on the building and operating of the Woodland Sports and Convention Center. What's your role in mending fences and getting the entire community involved in the success of the center?
Yeah, as I walk around the city and engage citizens, there are a lot of people that still feel that this is a tax burden upon them. So at this point, with it being approved, we really need to make sure that we make the project look exactly like what it was described as being and get the type of economic development that we want in the city to occur. And that means that we need to make sure that we understand exactly what the operating costs are. If you read through the feasibility studies, all of them required you to do a really, really excellent job of marketing, an excellent job of scheduling in order to accomplish exactly what the goals were for the project. And so really as a council, we need to make sure that those operating costs are kept in check, and that we make sure that it actually proceeds forward in exactly that manner so that we can get the best potential benefit out of it, so that even those that feel that the potential capital hit or the potential operating cost hit that they're going to take on their taxes, that they actually see the benefits of the project that was announced in the first place.
Thank you, Josh. Matt Gonzalez, same question. People have had strong opinions on the building and operating of the Woodland Sports and Convention Center. What's your role in mending fences and getting the entire community involved in the success of the center?
Yeah, I think as far as the city council goes, our major job is going to be making sure we stay transparent and clear and keep asking those tougher questions. I know that we've seen it quite a few times in regards to the city council meetings that we've had. Sometimes those that, if you've been watching, usually during those city council meetings, anytime that the Woodman Center is brought up, it's a pretty long segment. It's usually 10 to 15 minutes of question after question after question, and making sure that we have all those answers, ensuring that we know where all of the money is coming from. Obviously, the idea that it is in a reimbursement system where we're going to have to front for these projects and then being reimbursed after the fact puts us in an odd spot. I think it's important to know that we're tracking our spending on that and that we're not putting any sort of tax burden back onto the citizens. We need to make sure it succeeds, obviously, because that's a tremendous TIF district. and we want to make sure that it's something we reap benefits from, not need to perform cleanup on down the line.
Thank you, Matt. Larry Squire, people have had strong opinions on the building and operating of the Woodland Sports and Convention Center. What is your role in mending fences and getting the entire community involved in the success of the center?
Yeah, the center certainly had a lot of activity, and it was a long project, over 7 years, start stops with COVID going on, changing construction costs, a number of different factors, but a unique solution with getting federal and state money along with private money to have a valuable investment by the city in a reasonable number to make it work. So there was a lot of effort that went into it. I think, as Aaron said, it's all about communication, you know, and transparency or whatever you want to call it, but it's communication. And once the regular meeting updates took place at City Council and there was good communication information out, I think things kind of leveled out as we move forward to get to a spot of getting the project approved. Operation, anybody can build it. How do you manage it? How do you make it work? So there's no doubt that right now its operations are the key to this and finding the best path forward with making it a successful organization, not just financially as an individual standalone unit, but for the community.
Thank you, Larry. Paul Williams, same question. People have had strong opinions on the building and operating of the Woodland Sports and Convention Center. What is your role in mending fences and getting the entire community involved in the success of the center?
Well, I think I've been on the council since the beginning of this project. My concerns, and I voted in the negative on this quite a few times, and those reasons were, as I explained at those times, we, as the council, I didn't feel were getting enough information. There was too much information that was being given to the private or the committee that was in charge, but it wasn't getting back to the city council. Plus, I had a lot of concerns about that these studies were done prior to COVID, which I think we all know that just about everything in the world has changed since COVID. But now that the council has approved it, even though I voted against it, I will do my best to make sure that this is run the best that it can be and that it won't be a burden on the taxpayer. So even though I was against it in the beginning, now that the council has approved it and it's going to be built, I believe it's my job to make sure that it's done correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. We've got about 14 minutes left before we will conclude, and I want to get at least one question in from the audience, and then we'll save some time for closing remarks. This round will start with you, Josh. Affordable housing is a critical need in our community. What would you propose to increase the supply of affordable housing?
One of the things that I'm running on more than anything else is making sure that we move forward with those zoning changes. We need the opportunity to do what the comprehensive plan has actually had in it for a while and is even more reinforced in this most recent edition, which is having the ability to start to combine both economic growth and housing building at the same time, because really those two things can't have to go hand in hand. And so being able to deal with the zoning issue, create more opportunities for there to be mixed use where we can get both commercial development as well as some housing in the same location, and get the best economic growth and best tax base built out of those properties. We need to be able to start that process so that we have a better supply of housing. And really it's once we get that better supply of housing, that's where the affordability thing will improve. So that's one of my biggest focuses.
Thank you, Josh. Matt Gonzalez, affordable housing is a critical need in our community. What would you propose to increase the supply of affordable housing?
When it comes to affordable housing, we need to make sure that obviously that's 30% of your base income. So looking ahead, having jobs available for our citizens, especially the up and coming generation, and making sure that they can stay here, we're going to need to actually have a place to house them. There's a sense of dignity that comes with having a career position and owning your own home. I think that looking ahead, that might look more like apartments. Having grown up in New York, I know that apartments are something that's not as common out here in the Midwest, obviously, but I think if we were to get smaller apartment structures, help to talk about removing the stigma behind apartments and behind affordable housing, which, you know, it's very commonly associated with being of a lower socioeconomic status. I don't think that's the case. I think that affordable housing is part of responsible financial planning. You know, when my partner and I look to buy a home, part of that is making sure that we're both meeting our budgets, making sure that we have financial education enough to handle that. I think that's going to be a big part of it. I think that as a city, we need to actually make that affordable.
Thank you, man. Learned Squire, affordable housing is a critical need in the community. What would you propose to increase the supply of affordable housing?
Hey, just so you know, Matt is a rule follower. As soon as he flips the card red from up here, he stops. The rest of us linger for a second, not Matt. So if you want one good thing, Matt is a rule follower. So I don't know if I get an extra 6 seconds or not.
The clock is...
Still going, still going. That was mine. All right, I lost it. Anyway. Yeah, housing that people can afford has to match up with economics, social and economic realities within the community. So what we have for the quality of our jobs matters to what we need for our housing that is affordable to those people, like Matt said, the 30%. So we have to continue to take a look at both sides of that equation. One, the cost of housing, and we know housing costs went up, so how do we use zoning and other tools, whether it's apartments, TIF, we've been very successful with some TIFs with our apartments, but we just need to look at all the tools and how do we match both sides of the wages on that equation with what people can afford and then the cost of that living structure.
Thank you, Larry. Paul Williams, affordable housing is a critical need in the community. What would you propose to increase the supply of affordable housing?
Well, I think affordable housing is a critical need nationwide. I think we've seen it all over the country. One of the things that we are looking at, and again, through the Plan Commission and the City Council to redo our zoning, which with COVID, we've had a lot of people now that work from home. And we now have these office buildings that are either not being used at all or very much underused. Under our current rules, we couldn't turn that into housing. So we can look at the zoning and see which buildings and which areas that might be a good place to do affordable housing in some of these office buildings. It's going to be difficult. We've looked at a lot of things, and with the COVID and with the increase in everything, I believe that what we need to do, though, is to look at other opportunities on where we can do the housing to make it affordable for citizens.
Thank you, Paul. Aaron Burdick, affordable housing is a critical need. What would you propose to increase the supply of affordable housing?
Well, first of all, affordable housing, it's not just affordable housing, because if you don't have the housing for a labor pool, it's hard to get businesses here. Nobody's gonna, take a risk and invest in a community where they struggle to find labor to be able to work for their businesses. So if you're looking at economic development, housing, it kind of goes hand in hand with that. So talking with city management, there are basically three things that the city can do to help with this crisis. And again, this isn't isolated to the city of Janesville, state of Wisconsin, this is across the nation. One is tax incremental financing for multi-unit housing. That's a public-private partnership that the city can do to help with housing. The other thing is to strategically acquire properties and then be able to get development in certain sites, sell to developers and help with that. The other thing would be road extensions and some kind of infrastructure extensions from subdivisions that are ready to be extended. That will help also. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. With that, we're ready for closing comments, and we will stick to the format of keep it around 60 seconds if you could, and Matt, we'll leave it to you.
All right, well, thank you again for all coming out here this morning. I know it's bright and early, and this is probably a lot of information to get thrown at you when you were on your first cup of coffee. So I think one of the things I know I haven't mentioned at all tonight, or this morning rather, now that the sun's coming up, I'm a tech guy by trade, so a lot of what I do involves looking at multiple different systems. I feel that maps over very well when it comes to local government, when it comes to government in general, because it's very much like a spider web cluster. You touch one part of things, but you're immediately touching the rest. You can't avoid that. It's what I do in my day-to-day job. It's kind of how my mind works. I'm always considering, if we touch on one thing, what other outcomes are we looking at? And that, I think, is vital to working in city government, or any government, like I said. It's what makes me happy. It's what brings me joy. And as someone that enjoys being of service, I've got years in the service industry with restaurants, working at Apple. There's a certain kind of spark that comes from seeing that you've done right by someone else without any monetary incentive to it. So, thank you.
Thank you, man. Larry, Squire, your closing comments.
Yeah, kind of when you're sitting up here, you look out, you're preaching to the choir. This group that I'm looking at has a number of former city council members, a number of people that have been extremely active in our community. You all get it. You all understand what it's like to make a difference in the community. I'm excited about this. I've been able to be part of the fabric of the community in just about every angle you can imagine, whether it's working on housing projects in financing or helping individuals acquire their own financing, helping small business, large businesses, Can Do, other organizations like that. How do they all work together? I've been on Police and Fire Commission. I've touched almost every part of this city. I'm not sure which part I haven't yet, in some way, shape, or form of gaining knowledge. And I've run a very large organization and built great relationships over a period of time. I think this is a natural fit for what I did in my career, both personally and professionally. And I'm really excited to get a chance to add to that.
Thank you, Larry. Paul Williams, your closing comments.
First, I'd like to thank the Morning Rotary and the Rock County Civics Academy for putting this on. It's appreciated, even though it's early in the morning. We really need to have these types of forums. I first got on the council in 2000, I got off in 2008, then I got back on in 2014 till now, so I have about 16 years on the council. I'm also on the Plan Commission, and I'm chair of the Alcohol License Advisory Committee. I'm a lifelong Janesville resident. I really enjoy what I'm doing. I try to do the best I can for the city of Janesville. It's my community. My son and daughter-in-law live here, and my 3 grandkids live here. My other son lives in Las Vegas. I have a stepson and daughter-in-law and granddaughter out in Portland, Oregon, and then I have a son and daughter-in-law and 2 grandkids, step-grandkids up in Madison. So I'd like to continue. We have a lot of things going. I believe with, now that I'm retired and I have the experience, I really want to continue with the updating of the zoning ordinance and other things going on in Janesville. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Aaron Burdick, your closing comments.
Again, I just want to say thank you again, and I apologize for being a little late today. You know, I spent the last 2 years on the city council. I spent the last 25, well, I spent my whole life in the as a resident of Janesville, 2 adult kids. Basically, you know, I dedicated my adult life to the service of my community. I spent the last 25 years in law enforcement. I'm currently the commander of law enforcement services for the sheriff's office. Accomplished many things there. You know, I have the skill set to be on the city council. I'm responsible and I manage a $14 million a year budget. I lead 79 employees underneath me. You know, I've been tested that, you know, in my line of work, you assess a situation, you gather information, you make a decision. And, you know, and you got to continue to assess and pivot and so on and so forth. So I think these are the foundation which should make a good city council member. You know, you ask questions, you listen, you ask questions, you gather the information, and you got to have a backbone to make a decision. You know, based on the information you know at that time. But you got to be willing to always assess. You got to be willing to be fluid and move. And you know, I like to serve my community. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Aaron. Josh Erdman, you have the last word.
I think I just want to leave you guys with my two biggest priorities. Again, one of them is to make sure that we engage the citizens as much as possible, have an open, transparent process, actually listen to people. That's what I do on my daily basis for a job. That's what we want to do. We need to identify what the needs are of the citizens of Janesville, not just the wants, and make sure that those are always being focused on. We can't let operating costs exceed the ability to keep the needs. In this case, that includes things like public safety, sanitation, and your snow getting plowed. So we need to make sure that that's always is part of that. Also, talking to small business owners, as I have been engaging them, one of the things I would also like to see happen is an improved efficiency within the city bureaucracy to make sure that they can navigate that system easier. They all complain about how it is to engage with the city administration and how they never really know which way to go. There's always things that pop up. I think we need to reevaluate how we can streamline that process and make those bureaucratic processes actually work for the people who are trying to invest in the city instead of being an impediment to their ability to do so. So those are my two top priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. Early voting begins next week, so if your city clerk, if you want to take advantage of that, you'll have the opportunity to have the last word on April 2nd, and it's just a couple of weeks away. I want to thank the candidates for getting out this early in the day. I know it's been a challenge for some of you to be here this morning, but I very much appreciate you being here, and I'm confident the audience does. It's up to you folks. April 2nd is your chance for the last word. Thank you.